to our video tutorial for this sunflower chain cat scarf that you can see Melba modelling here. So we hope you enjoy it. Please like, share and subscribe, and we hope to see you soon. Thanks. Bye. Okay, so to make this sunflower chain cat scarf, you'll need yarn in 2 colours. Now, just before we start, you can make this as a sunflower chain, you can make it as other types of flowers. I'm going with sunflower, so I'm using bright yellow for the petals, and I'm going to go with this brown flecked yellow with a bit of texture to it for the interior, the center of the sunflowers. So these are both 2 to 3 weights. They're both cotton acrylic blends. You can use any yarn you like. You could use a winter weight yarn, a summer weight yarn, somewhere in between. It's probably going to suit yarns that are on the finer end. So 2 to 3 weight would be ideal. Now you can go, I'm going with this brown flecked, I want to see what this looks like as sunflowers, but in the previous one I made, I used just a classic brown on the inside. Okay, so you choose your colours. You just want probably two contrasting colours. You'll need a crochet hook to correspond to your yarn, and I'm using 3 millimeters. You'll need a darning needle with a relatively sharp point, just to do a little bit of sewing and weaving in ends. A sharp pair of scissors. If you're coming with me and doing the same that I've done, you'll be making some tassels. So you need a sharp pair of scissors to shape your tassels. And I've got these ones here. They're nice sharp sewing scissors. And an optional tape measure to take a measurement from your cat's neck circumference. Now this chain is super easy to fit and size, so it's only optional. I'll include in the description box below just a standard guide to cat sizes, and you can work out where your cat fits in those standard sizes, and just go with that as your guide for where your cat's neck circumference is if you haven't got the cat with you, or for whatever reason you don't have a measurement. So just optional to have a tape measure. Okay, so here are the 2 that I've made. So I've made this one previously, I'm filming this one today, and yeah, they're pretty much the same. I've just used different colors for the centers, and yeah, I've altered a little bit. See, these tassels don't hang quite as low as these ones do. So I've altered the chain length at the end, and I've done a couple of other little alterations, but we'll talk about details as we move through. So to make this, you'll need to know how to make tassels, but I'll show you how I make those, and they're only optional. If you don't want to make the tassels, you don't have to. You'll just need to slip knot onto your hook if you're not using the tassels. From there, everyone will need to know how to make a chain, how to double crochet, and how to make a slip stitch. You might use a single crochet and then just weaving in your ends. Okay, so the flowers are made out of double crochet. So we've got double crochet in the center, and then we've also got double crochets around the edge, and we'll use a slip stitch to create this little dimension to the petals. Okay, and yeah, that's pretty much it as far as techniques go, and then you'll just be deciding how you want to join it to make it into a loop that you can wrap around your cat's neck. We'll talk about that when we get to it. And in the back here, when we're working, what we'll do is we'll work, actually let me show you from here, we'll work from this first tassel, so the tassel that corresponds to the colour that you're using in the center. We'll work from that tassel up, we'll create all of the center pieces along the chain, and then we'll work back down the chain and add the petals, and then finally create the yellow tassel. So for me it's yellow, it might be a different color for you, but we'll work along the chain one way and then we'll work back down the chain. That will become clearer as we move along. And just the other difficulty is, if you're an absolute beginner, it just gets a little bit fiddly sometimes in the back here. So we're working the chains down, and it can get can just get a little bit fiddly. You might see what I mean as I film. I just get a little bit tangled every now and again. But other than that, just having a little bit of patience to work out those back areas. Yeah, it's not too complex. So yeah, yeah, I think that's all we can say about that for now, and we may as well just get into it. So let's get started. Okay, so we're going to start by making our first tassel. So take the colour that you're using for the interior of your flowers, and we're going to make a tassel. Now, there's a few different ways you can do this. I'm going to use my fingers today because this is going to be long enough for my tassel. So I'm going to use my 4 fingers, and I'm going to wrap. Now, you could also make something out of a piece of cardboard to wrap with. You can use a small book. It all depends on the length of the tassels you want. And actually, let's just give you an idea of the length of the tassels that I've ended up with once I've given them a little haircut. So from top to bottom, they're about 5 centimeters. Okay, so this is the size that I get by using my fingers. So if you want smaller tassels, you'll use something smaller. You could use just 3 of your fingers, But, if you make them a bit long and then you want to shorten them, it's no big deal. So I'd rather make them a little bit longer than shorter. So I'm going to wrap 12 times around my fingers. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And then I'm just going to snip off this end. And then, so I'm just going to take that off my fingers. I've got my what's going to become my tassel there. And then I'm just going to insert my hook into the top of the loop, all those loops. And I'm going to wrap my working yarn over my hook, the short piece at the back, pull up a loop through all these loops here, chain 1, and then if you want to secure it further, which is probably a good idea, you can just do a single crochet here or another chain 1, whatever works just to secure that. And then you can pull on, if you can find it, pull on, where's my tail end? Is that it? No, that's not it. Pull on your tail end, is that it? Yes, that's it. So I'm just going to pull on that tail end just to make sure that's nice and firm. And then we've got the start of our tassel, which we're going to finish off later. But we're going to start chaining from here. Now this is where you will need to start thinking about how much distance you want between your flowers. So what I'm going to do is for this first part, I'm going to chain 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, now let me bring in my other one here. So we're working with the equivalent of the brown, okay? So the length of this chain will be the amount that you've got hanging down from the center of your first flower down to your tassel. So if you want less, you'll chain less. If you want more hanging, for your tassels, you'll chain more. It's pretty much that simple. But these are just little things that you'll need to work through yourself, okay? So I've chained 8 there, okay? So, you can play around with this a little bit. Just bear in mind that you always need to, especially for this first section, you need to allow for the petals as well, okay? So your hang will matter how many petals you've got. And actually, let me just remind myself how many I've done previously. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Actually, let's just add, I'm just going to add an extra 2 there. So I'm going to make 10 actually. So you can see that this is, it's really arbitrary, the amount of, chains that you make in between each flower. It's really arbitrary. Like I said, you've just got to keep those things in mind that I mentioned at the beginning. The size of your cat, the size of the yarn you're using, the size of your hook you're using, and how much overlap or distance you want between your flowers. Okay? So once you've decided all those things, you're going to count 3 chains, 1, 2, and 3. And then in the 4th chain, you're going to make a double crochet. Okay, so just take 1 loop of the chain and make a double crochet into that chain. And then you're going to add 7 more. So you'll have a total of 8 double crochets on this side of the chain. So it's going to be half of the center of your sunflower. So what have I got there? 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to do 4 more. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I'm going to turn my chain. So I'm going to turn it around, and then in the other side of the chain, which can be a little bit tricky to find, but you want to find, see the other loop on the chain. For me, let's see if I can show you on here, it's this other loop here. So I need to get my hook underneath there. So I'm going to place 8 double crochets in the other side of the chain. So hopefully you can see that there. See, there's my little other loop of my chain, and I'm going to place 8 double crochets in the other side of that chain as well. So what have I done there? 2. So you're going to have to keep track of them. 3 and 4, 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. And what you can do is you can just go back and make sure you've got 16 stitches. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and actually I think I need one more in there because we're not counting the chain, okay? So your chain does not count. The chain that, the turning chain does not count as a stitch. So let me just double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Perfect. So you want 16 stitches, not including your chain. And then you're going to slip stitch into the first stitch. And that will create your first center. Okay? So we've started down here, and we've created the center of this first sunflower. And then we're going to just repeat the process for the rest of them. Okay, so we're just going to, you work out how many chains you want in between, and I'm doing 15 chains in between. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, so I'm doing 15 chains in between each of my flowers. Now I've left less chains here at the bottom because I don't want a super long overlap or a super long hang with my in between my last flower and my tassel. I kind of want those to be closer together than my flowers. So that's why I've gone less here. I did 10 here, if you remember. So I've got 7 chains hanging down here. Okay, and then once I've done my turning chain, so I count 1, 2, 3. In the 4th chain, I'm going to repeat that exact same process. So working in that first half of the chain. Oops, yarn split there. There we go. I'm going to place my 8 double crochets. 1, 2, and then in the other half I'm going to place my second 8 exactly as I did here. So that's how we're going to do this first part of our chain. Okay, so we're just going to create the centers moving up along the chain, and then we'll repeat that for however many flowers, and however much length we need for our sunflower chain. So in this one I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, you might need more, you might need less, depending on all those factors that we've talked about before. So so I've done my first 2. I'm going to go ahead and finish off this next center, and I'll do a few more. So you could why not? You could have different lengths of chain in between each flower. Some flowers are closer together, some flowers are further apart. You could do that. You could have them all the same distance. You could have them quite close together, allowing for the petals, and then you'll just have a little overlap. You know, you've got lots of creative leeway here. So you make use of that. And I'm going to go ahead and keep on going. I'm going to finish off my first 8. I'm going to turn, and then I'm going to locate that second strand. And actually, while you can still see it easily, you could even put a little stitch marker in there. As this side gets a bit full, that loop there, which actually is quite clear here. Now I've only put 2 in here. I've only put 2 stitches on the other side. So see how it's really clear here? You could just mark that. If you're having trouble finding the second side of your chain, just take a moment to mark it each time. And then, once this side is full and this little loop is harder to see, you've got your stitch marker in there to show you exactly where to work into. Okay? So continue along. I'm going to finish my next center, and I'm going to, go along to the end. And however many. I'm going to make the same size as my other one for Melba. So I'm going to add 6 of these centers along the chain. So you go ahead and do the same, and I'll meet you once I've done that. So just to remind you, here I'm finishing off my second center. I'm just going to count my stitches, make sure I've got 16, and which I've already done actually off camera. And then I'm going to just slip stitch into that first stitch. So ignore the chain, and I'm just going to slip stitch into that first stitch and then carry on my merry way. So I'll see you soon. Okay, so I've done my 6 little centers there. Now what I'm just going to do to finish this off on this color, I'm just going to chain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. So that's again an arbitrary number. And you can change it later. I'm just going to pull out this loop, and I'm going to leave that as it is. Now you can snip off your yarn, just leave a little bit of length just in case you want to change this length of chain at the end and you want to change the loop. So eventually this loop, it's too big as it is now, but eventually that loop is going to become these loops here that are what we attach, use to attach the scarf and, feed the flowers through. Okay, so you can see that those loops feed through and feed through the tassels. Okay, so those loops are going to feed through. So you can decide later how big you want those loops to be once you've seen how big your sunflowers work out. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that attached, and I'm going to start off making my petals. Okay, so we've gone down one end and we're going to work our way back towards the other end. Okay, so take your petal color, whatever you're using for your petal color, and you're going to tie on. So leave a good long tail, okay, because you want to be able to make your chain at the other end and your other loop in this color. So leave a good long tail. Okay, so I'm going to leave about sort of 30 centimeters. Okay, and then you're going to tie on to this first stitch. Okay, so tie on to your first stitch here. So that's where I've slip stitched. So I'm tying on, leaving a good long tail to this first stitch on my first center. Okay, so well, it's the last center I've done, but my first center as I move back down towards the bottom. Okay, so you're going to chain, so you can just tighten. Oh, Melba is on my table. Just one moment. Okay, so sorry about that. I just had to feed Melba. Okay, so we've tied on, and so actually let's go back. I just feel like I'm a bit distracted there. So I'm just going to tie on to my first stitch. So leaving a long tail, I just insert my hook, pull up a loop, and then I'm going to chain 3. Okay, and then I'll just tighten this tail end, and I'm going to insert 4 more. So that in this case, for this petals, or for this first petal, this chain counts as a stitch. Okay, so we need 4 more to make a total of 5. So each each petal is going to be made up of 5 double crochets. So counting the chain, we do 4 more to make the 5 in that first stitch. And then we're going to just pull out our hook, pull out the loop, insert your hook into that last chain, and then back into the hook, into the loop that you pulled out. Tighten it on your hook, and then pull that loop, pull your yarn through those 2 loops. Okay, so that's our first petal, and then we're going to chain 2 to get to the next petal. And just make sure that you don't miss a stitch, okay? They can sometimes get a little bit hidden. So in the next stitch, we're going to make 5 double crochets. So in this one we don't have the chain to count, so we're doing 5 double crochets. That's 3, 4, and 5. So let's do that again together. So pull out your hook, just pull out the loop a little, find your first stitch, insert your hook back into the loop, tighten the loop, and then pull your yarn through both. Okay. So that's your second petal, and then you'll go around and you'll do that for each stitch. So making sure at the end you've got 16 petals. Okay, so each petal 5 double crochets, 3, 4, and 5. One more. Let's just do this one more time together. Once more. Pull out your hook, insert your hook into the first stitch, insert your hook into the loop, back into the loop. Oops. Tighten that on your hook and pull through. Okay, so there's my first 3 petals. So I'm going to work my way around to make my 16 petals, and I'll meet you once I get round to the other side. So once again, you might need to count your petals, make sure you've got the full 16, and I'll meet you when we get around this other side here. Okay, so I'm just finishing my 16th stitch off here. Just pull through, chain my 2. So I've counted, I've got 16 stitches all the way around, and then I'm just going to, after I've chained my 2, I'm just going to slip stitch into the side of this first petal, okay, at the back there, just on the side. Okay, so that finishes my first sunflower. Now we're going to have to work our way down to get to the next center. So what we're going to do is turn over. So this is just my chain, and as I said before, you can snip it. If this end is annoying you, you can snip it off. Just leave, you know, sort of again about 30 centimeters just to play with in case you need to adjust the length of your chain and the loop. So just allow plenty there. But if it's annoying you, you can snip it off. And then we're going to make a chain. So we want to make a chain across so we can get across to this other side, so we can start to work into our, let me just get all my tail ends out the way. That's my tail end from my starting point. Let's get those 2 out the way. So you want to work your way across, so you're coming, and that should be out that way actually. Excuse me. Okay, so we want to work our way across so we can start on to the next center. Okay, so we're going to make a chain, and you just make the chain to the length that you need. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So let's see. So it'll depend on the size that your flowers have turned out. So I think the 8's going to be enough. So I just want to secure this chain. So find where this will hang. Okay, so this chain here. This chain here, so where it will hang down, you just want to, so on the opposite side of this top chain, so you just want to, so if you started at 12 o'clock, worked your whole way round, now we're going down to 6 o'clock to slip stitch that chain. So we'll just slip stitch that into the back there, so that's going down the back. And then we're going to do the length of chain that we need to get us to this next center point. Okay, so for me it's probably going to be about 8, and you don't want that chain. Actually, I'm going to add a couple of extra chains on there because that's just pulling that. I'm going to add 2 extra, so that's 10. So because it's just pulling, I don't want it to pull my sunflower out of shape at all. So it's better to have that chain at the back just a little bit looser than tighter. Okay, and then I'm going to chain to get to my next center. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's see how we're doing for length. Yeah, another couple, 7, 8. So let's say I've done 10 chains there to secure it behind the back of the flower, and then I've done another 8 for me to get me to my next center. Okay, so where I'm going to start once again. So I'm just going to attach to my first stitch. So always start on the stitch, that first stitch, okay? Otherwise, if you end up going the other way, you'll have some flowers facing the wrong way. Okay, so you want to be into this, so make sure that your chain's in the right way, facing the right way, and then you'll slip stitch. So this is where I think I said at the beginning, it can be a little bit fiddly in places, and this is, this is what I was talking about. So sometimes it gets a little bit fiddly, okay? But you can see, so this is the back of my first flower. I've done my chain down, secured it in the back there, and then I've chained the length to be able to get to my next chain, or my next center, I should say, of my, of my sunflower chain. And then I'm just going to repeat that process. So I'm going to chain my 3, and then for this first stitch, actually I've slip stitched into the wrong one. Sorry about that. So I should have slip stitched. So you want to slip stitch just in your first stitch there, the one you've slip stitched, that you slip stitched into. Okay, so that's your first stitch. Okay, so forgive me. So sorry, hopefully I haven't confused you there. So you want to slip stitch into that first stitch, which is the stitch that you slip stitched into. So chain 3, and then you'll add your 4 extra stitches, remembering that your chain counts as a stitch. 2, 3, 4, and 5, counting my chain. And then I'm just going to repeat what I've been doing. So hook into the first chain, try and take two loops if you can of that chain into my loop on my 5th stitch, pull through, chain 2. Okay, so I'm going to work my way around, make my 16 petals on this next center, and then I'm just going to repeat that all the way down. Okay, so I'm going to repeat my 10 chains, secure it at the base, so on the back of my flower, so that's my front, on the back of the flower, and then I'm going to chain my 8 to get to my next center, and I'm just going to repeat the process. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that for my next, so finish this one off and then my next 4 centers, and I'll meet you once I get down here, okay, and we'll show you how to finish off with making the second tassel if that's what you're doing. Okay, so I'll see you soon. Okay, so I've just finished off my last sunflower there. So now we're going to make the other tassel. Okay, so the other tassel is only optional. If you wanted to just leave one tassel and just tie off here, so what you could do is just do your chain across so you can secure, or you don't even need to do that actually. You could just tie off here, so yarn over, pull through, and snip your end and just weave your final end into the back here. But if you want to make the second tassel, so you'll do what we've done before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So I'm going to just secure that chain at the back there. Same as what we've been doing. Get those out the way. So do my secure at 6 o'clock. slip stitch into the back there. And then you don't have to make your next tassel, like your second tassel, the same length, or you can have one that hangs lower than the other, or you can have them both at the same. But I'm going to just chain 1, 2, 3 because I don't want my tassels to be too long, but I also just want one slightly lower than the other just to add some interest. So I'm just going to pull out this loop. Okay, so I've done the chain that I want for the length of hang to my second tassel. So I'm just going to pull out my loop, and I'm going to snip off my end. So I'll leave a good length. And now I'm going to make my tassel out of my petal colour. Okay, so I'm just going to do exactly the same as I did before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Snip off that end. And what I'm going to do is just kind of the same thing as what we did down the other end. So I'll just insert my hook back in there, and I'm just going to insert my hook, pull my yarn through, and make a slip stitch here, and then chain 1 to secure it. And you can, like you did before, if you want to do a single crochet or an extra chain or whatever just to secure it, you can do that. Just make sure that you've got your, let's just take out that one. Just make sure you've got it all nice and even. And then you're just going to yarn over and pull through and pull that end through. So that can become part of your bottom tassel. Oops, I've got one that I'm pulling on there. That shouldn't pull. I need to pull that back out. That's my tail. Let's just pull that back through. Okay, so we're going to finish off these tassels, so what we're going to do is, let's go to our previous one. So we're going to insert our scissors into all the loops and snip through the loops, and then we're going to create our tassel. So you'll take a length of your colour, and you're just going to tie, let's do it up the right way. I'm going to just tie to make a little head. So actually I'll just snip off a length, so about 20 centimetres, and you're just going to tie. So you'll place your yarn underneath, and you're just going to tie a little, so that it's like you're making a little head for your tassel, and you double knot that, make that nice and secure. And then taking your darning needle, you'll need to pull through, so that little knot that you've just tied, take one end, so you'll have one end that's probably sticking out a little bit. So what you'll do is you'll just thread your darning needle with that tail end, and you'll just feed it underneath that little tie that you've just done, okay, and just into the main part of the tassel. Just pull that through. So then you've got all of your pieces hanging down, and you've got your little tassel head. You can just shape it if you need to. And then you're going to give your tassel, well, actually what I would recommend that you do is make your other tassel, so you can work out how long you want it. So you've got your other tassel, and what I'll do is I'm just going to snip off that long tail, and I'll use that to tie my little head with, tassel head with. So we just do exactly the same thing. So just make sure that you've got all that center part together, and any bits that are sticking out, you can just, you know, do that threading of your needle and work it into the main part of the tassel. So I'll just tie my little head of my tassel here. One, and so make that nice and tight, and then if you need to, just shape your tassel a little. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to thread my needle with this piece that's sort of sticking out. There we go. And then, so I'm just going to also work this little bit down into my tassel. I've got a piece that I need to pull through. So any bits that you need to pull down into the tassel, there's that bit I need to pull down. So I need to find those two little strands and pull them down a little just to tighten them up. I'll do that off camera. But I'm just taking this one that's sticking up and I'm just going to feed it down into the tassel. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. So you just got your head of your tassel, and you can shape it if you need to, and pull any of the strands down. If you've got your head that's a little bit uneven, find the strand and just gently pull it into shape. And this is the tail from the tie that I've tied the head with. So I'm just also going to work, so one of them you'll find it probably is sticking out slightly, and I'm just going to work that down into the main part of my tassel as well. Okay, and so you've got your tassel there, and just make sure it's shaped and attached as you want it to be. And then we're going to give them both a haircut. Now you can of course make the tassels two different lengths, and I'm going to have to stick my scissors in and cut all those bits. So cut the bottom, and then I'm going to even up my tassels. I might just have two that are different lengths on this one. So you want to, obviously you're going to be dictated by your shortest. Let me just get that all nice and combed out. So I'm going to be limited by my shortest one, so I'm just going to cut across, and then you can just sort of even them up if you need to. That's one, and then I'm going to do the same with the other tassel. And you know, like I said, you can leave one longer, or if you want to have them the same length, just give them a snip. There we go. So yeah, those are looking pretty good. Let's just see if I want to make any alterations. No, I think they're looking good. Let's just see how they hang. Yeah, they're fine. Okay, so now we need to go back to the other end and just finish off our other end. So get your two strands that you've got at the other end, and you're going to work out. So let's work the strand that we did for our centers, the center color strand. So you're going to have to work out how, and I've snipped off my end, but I've left plenty that I can play with. So you're going to have to work out how much, you know, how much you need for a loop. Okay. Now what you can do, the alternative to this is if you want to just feed your other end through that, see, through that little gap there, you can also do it that way. If you can fit it through, You can also do it that way, and I might even do it that way this time actually. I didn't do it that way on the last one, but you know, you've got leeway to adjust. So let's see how that sits. Yeah, actually I kind of like that idea. Yeah, I'm going to do that. So what you can do, and I've left the length, but it doesn't matter, you know. Try not to be too wasteful, but it doesn't matter at this point. So what I did on the other one is I chained here. So I chained a little bit of length, and then I left a loop that I could feed my sunflowers through. So let's just show you what I did there. So you just you know, chain the length you want, and then you can, you know, you just pull out and leave a loop like that, and just, you know, tie a little knot. Or what you can do is you can make a chain the length you need, and then you can come back and you can slip stitch back into here. Okay, so back into the back of that last flower. So, oh, that's my electronics turning off. Yes, so sorry about that. Yeah, so you can, there's a few different ways you can finish this off, but I'm going to, I think with this one, I'm going to use just that back chain as I showed you before. So yeah, sorry, I got a little bit distracted there. So you can create a loop using one strand, and then you would just slip stitch into here, yarn over, pull through. You can create just one strand, and you don't have to create it, you know, you don't have to use the second strand. What I did with the last one is I created a loop with both strands, just so I've got, you know, the consistency between having two chains together throughout. So you could do, you know, you could do a second one as well. So what I would do is I just insert my hook for this second loop into the back, into the back of the flower here, and then I just pull up a loop with my tail end in the petal color, and then I would just create my chain from there. Okay, so you can create two loops using each color, you know, one for each color. So then you've got the consistency of the look with the, you know, the two chains throughout. Okay, so that's, you know, that's entirely up to you how you finish that off. So yeah, yeah, like I said, hopefully that's, you know, not too hard to understand. Let's just work that one back through, but I kind of like how that sits behind there, so that's what I'm going to do this time. So what I can do is I can just yarn over and pull through on both of these tail ends, which is what I will do. So I'll just undo those chains. So yeah, you finish that. You finish this off however works for you. And oops, I think I can just undo one more chain there. There we go. And I'm going to just yarn over, pull through, and leave a little length. And then I'm going to weave in those tail ends in the back here. So let's just pull that one tight. So that one I can just weave in. I don't even need to yarn over and pull through for that one. And I'll just cut off the extra length that I left, which I'm not going to use now. And then when you've finished off, whether you've, you know, slip stitched to join your little chain or loop or whatever you've done, you'll take your tail ends and you'll just weave them into the back of your flower. Okay, so you'll just go around, so work into the back, and you'll just work in those tail ends into the back here. And just go backwards and forwards a couple of times. Just make sure you've got a nice connection. I might just go back one more time. But I'm going to finish off weaving in these ends off camera. And we'll come back and we'll finish off together. Okay, so here's my two finished versions of my sunflower chain scarf. This one here, the tassels hang a little bit lower. This one here, they don't hang quite so low. So you know, you can adjust all of those things. This one here, I've fed through the back of the flower, the chain there, and I've just fed the tassels through. This one I've created the loops, which are here, and then I've fed two flowers through. So they sit a little bit differently, they look slightly different. So you know, you can be a bit creative with how you finish it off, how it ends up looking. So I'm really pleased with how this has turned out, and I would love to see how yours turns out. So please send along your photos to catventurous.community@gmail.com, or you can tag us on social media at catventurous.crochet. So yeah, thanks very much for being here, and we hope to see you soon. Bye. Thank you. Excellent. Excellent modelling. What a good girl. You want some treats? She's so good. Thanks, Melba. Bye. Bye.